Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of JT Talks Jobs. This is the show that teaches you everything that school didn't when it comes to job search and career growth. My name is JT O'Donnell. Today we're going to be talking about two simple quizzes that you can use to help you when you're thinking about your next career move, whether it's a career change, changing industries, changing jobs, changing entire career paths. These two tools are going to help you do some deep self-assessment so that you can make more informed decisions, which is really important because we know that career satisfaction comes from knowing that we feel like we're doing the right thing. So with that in mind, I'm going to tell you that the two quizzes we're going to be talking about today are online and totally free for you to take. You will find them over at our site, workitdaily.com/resources. And I know that my teammates are going to be popping those URLs in for you as well. Some people have already actually done that. And it's great that if you've already taken those quizzes and have the results, some of you might want to take them while you're listening to the show. Feel free to do that. It's not very long for you to complete them. All right. And so we're going to get started. I don't want to waste any time. This is a very cool topic. Both of these tests were built in-house at Work It Daily. These are quizzes that we use with our Work It Daily members to help them deeply self-assess themselves. Now, we have a much more comprehensive self-assessment than just these two quizzes. There's actually about 7 different tools that people take as part of a professional strengths assessment. And then we look at all of those tools and talk them through what it means so that they can start to dial in on potential career paths, especially for the folks that join us who are looking to make a pretty significant career change. But these two quizzes are going to give you a very good foundation. They're also the most popular, and I'm sure you'll see why in a moment, because they seem to provide the most amount of aha moments in terms of what people need to know about themselves. So let's talk about that a little bit. Again, I'm going to tell you, anytime you're looking to make your next career move, whether it's within your industry or you're looking for a promotion or you're looking to pivot entirely, self-assessment makes your process more efficient. I mentioned this, and I hope it's sinking into our listeners and our viewers that you are a business of one. And if you think of yourself as a business of one, then you know that any good business has a very clear sense of what their strengths are and what they should be marketing about themselves. And by knowing that, it makes it easier for them to dial in and target the market that they want to go after, right? So if I have any salespeople listening, you understand this idea of a territory and a region and an ideal customer profile. Well, it's no different for us when we're trying to make our next career move. The more we know about ourselves, the more we know what we can and can't do, the easier it is for us to say, all right, this is the area that I want to focus in on. And this is very, very strategic thinking and something they don't teach us in school, unfortunately. So let's get down to the first test, which is a personality quiz, or what also would be known as a communication style quiz. The formal name for this quiz, for years we've used it. It was called the ISAT, the Interaction Style Assessment Test, the ISAT. But we'll just call it a personality quiz right now. Now, this is where people start to get, I usually start to get some snark or some pushback, because there are a lot of people that feel that, don't put me in a box, don't label me. The moment you label me, there's bias. And that's not the intent of these assessments at all. It is not to say that if you get a certain result today that you couldn't change that result if you wanted to. But the reality is, over many, many years of doing this, by the way, that there are 4 dominant personalities in the workplace. So while we might have a little bit of each of these qualities, we're going to tend to display one more prominently than the rest. And it's extremely valuable to know that, because our personality will help dictate the kind of work we enjoy doing. So the 4 dominant styles that you'll learn about if you take this quiz are the contemplator, the commander, the empathizer, and the energizer. And these individuals, they share some traits, and they're also different on a spectrum on sort of 2 axes. So if I was to show you something like this, you could see that to the left, right, is the more tactful. So these are going to be the styles or the personalities that are less direct. They tend to be more careful with their words. They're sort of more sensitive to people's feelings. They tend to want to avoid conflict more and create harmony, right? So that would be those that are in the empathizer and the contemplator category. On the other side, to the point, the energizers and the commanders, they're more direct, they're more to the point, they're faster with their decision making, they're faster in their energy, and there's just more of almost like a hustle perception to them that we see, all having to do with that directness and that pace. You'll also see the top and the bottom axis. So the folks that are on the top tend to be more expressive. We might hear the term more extroverted as well. So this is where empathizers and energizers share a more expressive nature. Okay. So, and then there's the flip side. There's the more controlled, which would be the contemplators and the commanders. They come across more reserved in their style. So what does that mean? Well, if we take a look at those, you can assume that empathizers, right? These are the individuals that are always thinking about other people's needs. They really want harmony. They want everyone to be happy and feel good on their team. They're very friendly, and they're very, very good at putting themselves in someone else's shoes and having that added perspective. Similar to them in terms of their tact and their caring and their feelings are the contemplators, but the contemplators are more reserved. So they tend to show less facial expressions, use less hand gestures. They're harder to read. And so they come across, again, more reserved and quiet. But they're very thoughtful. And when they do speak, they say very intelligent things that get people's attention because you know they've put a lot of thought into it. On the other side, we have the energizers. So going back to that expressive, more extroverted nature, energizers use a lot of hand gestures. But unlike the empathizers, where the focus is on people's feelings, right, and that inclusiveness, energizers are more driven on getting results. So a lot of times you'll see energizers are sort of captains of the team, and they really know how to move people forward and diffuse tense situations with a little humor. They're very quick-witted. So they keep the pace going, and they know how to hold attention. And then on that same speed side, but more reserved, is the commanders. So commanders tend to be, again, like contemplators, less facial expressions, more serious in demeanor, but they go at a fast pace. So there's an intensity to commanders. You see a lot of people that are in charge, CEOs and executives, with a commander personality because they're put into difficult situations. They have to multitask. And again, they have to deal with a lot of conflict, and they know how to push through that. Again, not less emotional, right? And more about let's get this done. Now, there is no bad style to be. Hopefully all of you in listening to those can hear the qualities that are good. And honestly, the best teams that I've worked with over the years are diverse in the fact that they have all these different styles, and these styles learn to work with one another. That being said, these styles have polar opposites, and in situations of conflict, that can really come to a head, right? So let's talk about some classic conflicts. Well, there's the empathizer and the commander. You can see they are polar opposites here on this grid. Empathizers, all about people's feelings, right? Being tactful, being really, careful and inclusive and focused on the human being. Then you've got the commander that's faster paced, not about feelings, more about facts and getting results. So when those two are in an argumentative mode, it can be quite challenging because their priorities and what they value in communication are completely different. On the flip side, you can have the energizers and the contemplators, also the polar opposites, really struggling. You have at times of stress, contemplators are going to tend to be even more quiet, more reserved, and want to take more time to think through and make a logical decision. They don't like to be rushed, right? Whereas energizers are the opposite. They want to get through the pain as quickly as possible. They want to just make changes, take action, and they want to express that and get that out of people as much as possible. So those two dynamics, again, are completely opposite and can create these stressful situations. So you can see how understanding your communication style in the workplace, your personality in the workplace, is very, very important, because you want to choose roles where that particular style is going to be elevated, where it's going to play to the strength of that style. And we're going to talk more about that in a minute. Okay. All right. So now we're going to move on, because I just want to talk about your strengths, create your weaknesses. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I want you to think about, if you gravitate towards a certain style and you like that style, have to remember that there are 3 other styles that don't see it the way you do. And so oftentimes, if we don't understand the different styles and how they see us, we can be misunderstood, especially in times of stress. So for example, empathizers and contemplators who are more tactful and work at a slower pace can be seen as procrastinators. Now, nobody likes to be labeled a procrastinator, but that's how you can be perceived in comparison to energizers and commanders who are going more quickly, who you might see as more pushy. See how that works? One's a procrastinator, one's a pusher. Well, neither of those sound attractive, but they're how you can be misperceived. Same thing when we talk about being more expressive, right? And being more introverted, extroverted, introverted. The people that are more expressive can oftentimes be seen as pleasers. They're trying to make everybody happy. And the folks on the bottom can be seen as those planners where they're not really taking into account the emotions of others, and they're more focused on the planning and the execution. So again, neither of those sound attractive nor correct, but in relation, when misperceived, this is what can happen. So it's very important that we understand this information about ourselves, folks. And there are lots of different personality tests out there that you can take. And most of us have taken some form of them. But very soon here, I'm going to show you how we're going to take this particular personality quiz, tie it to a second one, and really start to look at the unique combinations and how they can impact your career choices. All right, so let's move on to the second one, which is referred to as workplace personas. So the persona quiz, the personality quiz, I've literally been using since I started private practice, so over 18 years now. And the workplace persona quiz is one, is much newer. We actually built this in 2015 based on some research. So this has been around for 5 years now, but we've literally had probably at this point over 100,000 people take this quiz. It's amazing. And the reason this quiz became so important, and for us as a career coaching company to develop it, was that we had to make people understand how they liked to create value. Because if you know how you like to create value, you know how you like to feel satisfied from a good day's work. And if you can tie how you feel satisfied to how you create value, you can actually go look for jobs that need you to create value in the way you prefer. And this is how you build up more career satisfaction. So it's a very powerful tool. Now, what you'll find when you take this quiz is that there are 8 styles. So over the years of research, we were able to identify that there are 8 main ways that people like to create value on the job that companies will pay for. And you can see them here: builder, super connector, researcher, optimizer, warrior, mentor, visionary, and educator. Now, most of us are going to dominate in 2 to 3 areas. And when you take this quiz, the way you know that is that anything that scores 20% to 25% is a dominant style. And most people will have 1 to 2 dominant styles at least, sometimes 3, but usually 1 to 2, followed by a couple that'll be at, say, 15%, which is very high and very close. And then you're going to have some that rank very low, only 10%, 5%, or maybe not at all. So what this tells you is that those top styles, those highest ranking styles, those are how you prefer to work, the things you would prefer to do on the job that create value. And the ones lowest on the list are the ones that you least prefer. And I want you to think about that. And I'm going to give you a very quick overview. Now, when you take this quiz and you ask for the results, we actually have videos that go into much greater detail about each of these styles. But very quickly, I want you to think about this. So mentors are individuals that love to coach. They're not going to give people the answers. That's actually an educator, the one on the bottom here. Educators like to fill in gaps of knowledge and give people information. Mentors like to develop the skills of individuals, and that requires a coaching mindset, which is quite different from an educator or teaching mindset. Then you have the researcher. This is somebody who loves to look up facts and figures, do their homework, and gather data. Whereas there's the builder who likes to take that research, that blueprint, and execute on it. So a builder wants to roll up their sleeves and just start to create and make things happen based on the blueprint, right? They don't want to do the research, but they sure as heck want to be able to build that thing and see it completed. Then there's the warrior. Now, a warrior is somebody who has incredible loyalty to the cause. So for them, they don't really care what job they do. They'll do any job as long as they know the job is somehow in support of the greater mission. This is very inspiring to them when they do that. On the flip side, you have an optimizer. So an optimizer is somebody that loves to fix broken things or improve process. They can go into a situation and immediately see where the bottlenecks are and start to organize things so they can be more efficient and more effective. And the last 2 we have is the super connector. Now, a super connector is somebody that loves to bring people together. They love introducing 2 people. They love having deep and meaningful conversations with people in order to feel a bond, right? In order to feel a connection. And lastly is the visionary. These individuals can see the future. They can connect the dots, and they can articulate an idea in a way that makes other people, the light bulb go off in their head. And the other people, now I see it, now I understand it, which is very important because if you're going to get people behind a mission and make things happen, somebody needs to be visionary enough in order to convey that to them to get them motivated and excited. So you can see all of these, very similar to the personality, all of these personas are highly relevant and all quite interesting in their own right. But most of us will gravitate towards 2 or 3 that are just the things that we'd like to do most. And that's very important to understand as well. So now I want you to think about that. If you have the personality and the persona, what can you do with it? Well, again, having coached at this point thousands of people on this concept and putting these two together, some really interesting patterns start to emerge. And I want to show you just how slight differences in the combination can have a major impact. So this is what I would call a classic combo, a classic set of combos, and one that I've coached to many, many times. So we will see somebody come across our desk who is an energizer, and their personas are super connector, educator, and visionary. Individuals with this combo are very good at sales. And the reason for that is not the super connector factor, to be honest with you. That doesn't need to be the primary. I've seen people where they were very good at selling, but they didn't necessarily have the super connector, but they definitely had educator and visionary. And the reason for that is that they have this energy. When we talk about sales, they meet people, they engage people, they can connect the dots for people and really share with them, educate them on why their solution is the right solution. So they don't really sell. They just leverage their natural strengths to tell a story and help somebody understand and feel connected and feel trusted and respected, make them really get to a place where it's just logical that the product or service they're selling is the right thing. And as a result, this individual is very authentic, very sincere, and very trustworthy. And these are the people that do extremely well in sales. I will then have people come to me who still have the super connector, educator, and optimizer style, right? So slightly different there, and be an empathizer. So somebody like that might come and say, well, I'm a super connector and I'm an educator. Would I be good in sales? And the answer is no, you would not be. And the reason for that is empathizers avoid conflict. They like everyone to be happy. And in a sales role, they don't want to disappoint anybody. They don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And they certainly don't want to be uncomfortable and ask somebody for their business. So they don't do well in sales. Also, on top of that, if you're an optimizer, you like to do process improvement. So you may not have the vision to be able to make that sale, but you definitely have the ability to support somebody in their purchase of something. So my point being here is that I've had people come to me in the past and say, JT, I've tried sales. Everybody says I'm a natural super connector and I'm really good at educating people. And they say that I absolutely should be in sales and I hate it. And we look at it, and the reason they hate sales is because they're not an energizer, they're an empathizer. And on top of that, they're more of an optimizer, meaning where they really should be is customer service. Both of them work with people. Both of them require to educate. Both of them are right, that connecting. But the customer service plays to the empathy factor of the empathizer. It plays to the fact that person can put themselves in the customer's shoes, especially when the customer is unhappy, and is very good if they've got the optimizer trait, very good at solving problems and making that customer happy. So can we see how these two combinations, when they're better understood, really can help you make better decisions? Excellent. All right, let's look at one more example. This is a fun one that I've done before as well. So a lot of times we're brought into organizations to assess talent and to help them make sure that they're building the right organization, especially at the executive level, the C-suite level. And so one classic combination I'll see in the startup world is the commander, who is a warrior, optimizer, visionary. Now, this would be a classic combo for a startup CEO. Not an established company CEO, mind you. Bigger companies that are more established require a totally different type of executive. But in startup mode, when a company is really fighting for every dollar, trying to make a name for itself, 2 out of 3 startups fail. So really just trying to not fail. You can see that you would need a commander, somebody who's a real go-getter, who's not afraid of conflict, who sets high standards for themselves and who really wants to push forward, who's a warrior, 200% committed to the mission, all in on the mission, who's an optimizer, so is seeing a problem in the marketplace and clearly is focused on fixing it and making it better, and who's a visionary who can get up in front of a room and connect the dots and really help everybody understand what it's going to look like in 6 months, in a year, etc., so that the whole rest of the company can follow suit. Now let's take a look at the other side. Let's say you're a contemplator, you also have the warrior and optimizer aspects, okay? So you are equally passionate about the company, about what the mission is. You are super loyal. You too like to fix things, process improvement, save money, get things organized. If things are broken, fix them, make them work faster. But you've got the researcher aspect in you. So you like to do something called your due diligence. So whereas you're not as much of a visionary, you are the person that likes to get in there deep and do the numbers in order to make sure that you're making good decisions. Couple that with a contemplator style, somebody that likes to cross their T's, dot their I's, very tactful, very thoughtful, wants to think things through. And this person is going to be the ideal complement to the startup CEO in the startup CFO role, Chief Financial Officer. So see the difference between the two? So we're always trying to understand these unique combinations of skills and how just having a couple things swapped out can completely change the kind of role that somebody should be gravitating towards. And again, these are classic combos or examples that I could very easily articulate to all of you today. But there are so many different combinations. So when people join Work It Daily, one of the things we like to do is have them go through our professional strengths assessment to start to put all of this together so that then when they go and start to look at roles, they can identify and go, okay, I would like this role for these reasons. And I may not love all aspects of the job because guess what? There's no perfect job out there, folks. But if you can figure out that a good 70% of your time is going to be spent doing things that align with your personality and your personas, I can tell you from a scientific standpoint that there's a much higher chance you're going to like that job and you're going to be able to muddle through the 30% of it that you don't enjoy doing as much. And that's really what this is about, is again, making informed decisions about our career moves so that we can feel more satisfied and successful. All right. So I'm just going to finish this up before we start taking some questions. And I just want to recap. What did we learn today? To find a satisfying career and to make a good next career move, you need to assess A, how you are most comfortable communicating, which is your personality, and B, how you like to stay busy, which is your workplace persona. Okay? Awesome. All right. So we're going to go back now and go to some Q&A. I know my team is bringing up some questions here. Hey, folks, before I start taking all your questions, just a quick reminder, lots of people being laid off these days, very high unemployment rates. I know that it won't last forever, but all these people are going to need to go back and look for work. If you are one of those individuals or you know somebody who has been laid off, please direct them to our free webinar, free coaching called Laid Off and Looking. Thousands of people have downloaded this, and we've given them the 6 steps that they can take to kickstart the strategy of their job search so that they can really bust ahead of the competition. Just a quick note here, as soon as hiring starts up again, literally, no joke, thousands of people will start applying for the same job, which is going to make it insanely competitive. And if you don't know these 6 strategies, you are not going to be able to work efficiently at finding the right opportunity for you. So it's a really info-packed webinar. I did it with our head of coaching, Ariella. I think you'll find it enjoyable. And again, if you know somebody, pay it forward, share the link that we've got here, give them access to this free tool, and just give them the resources because it's a very positive and motivating and constructive conversation that gets them in gear, which is the most important thing after we've been laid off and we need to start looking. All right. So I'm going to start up with my first questions here. My first question about this today is from Anthony. He says, is it possible to have some overlap between contemplators and energizers? That's interesting. So if I was to go back to that screenshot, Anthony, those are polar opposites, but you can have a little bit of traits of each one, but they're very, very opposite, right? Energizers use hand gestures and body language and facial expression and talk at a very fast pace. Contemplators, very reserved, talk a lot slower, don't use eye contact, don't say as many words, definitely don't use hand gestures, much harder to read. So it's not possible for you to have overlapping between those two because they're just so different. Now, you might have some that are adjacent. So as I pointed out, you might have empathizer and contemplator traits, or you might have contemplator and commander traits that might pair up a bit. So you always have that kind of corner adjacent that you can look at, and that would be more common there. David said, would contemplators bore and frustrate the energizers? It's funny that you say that. It's not so much bore, but frustrate for sure, David. And here's the reason why. So an energizer an energizer is waiting to get a reaction out of you. They want you to be as expressive as they are. They want you to tell them exactly what you're thinking and feeling. And they do that through body language, again, facial expressions. You know what's going on. So when they're in a situation where they need answers fast and they've got a contemplator who is not saying anything, not responding quickly to their emails, is just getting more and more quiet, for them, it's like pulling teeth. And that is frustrating, because they want this person to communicate in the style that they're used to communicating in, right? So yeah, it can be frustrating. On the flip side, though, in defense of the contemplator, when a contemplator is in that stressful situation, I just need my energizers to know you look crazy to them. They can't even hear you. They can't even keep up with what you're saying because you're talking too fast. All they just see is this swirl of arms and sound and hair and everything moving around. And it's like a pinball going around. So they don't have a lot of trust and respect for that as well. So it's very important that we learn, when we're working with somebody who has a different style than ourselves, to pay attention, especially if it's a polar opposite, and one, not react, right? I mean, for me, contemplators are by far one of the most fascinating for me, because they are extremely sensitive people, but they are the most misperceived of the four. And by that, I mean, studies show contemplators are most likely passed over for promotion. And the reason for that is most people assume, oh, they're fine. They're happy. They'd speak up if they wanted more. Oh, they're not frustrated. They're fine. They don't talk. They don't share their emotions. I once had a contemplator tell me, JT, every time I open my mouth, it's a window to my soul. So I'm going to be very tactful, right, in what I say, or I'm not going to say anything at all. And so I love working with contemplators because I like to help them find their voice. I like to show them how they can not get flustered and how they can work with these other styles on their own terms so that they can get their points across, so that they can make sure that their feelings are heard in a way that they feel comfortable, right? And it's always really rewarding for me when I work with a contemplator and they end up getting promoted for those very qualities, that they are tactful, that they are thoughtful, right? But we help them minimize the perceived weaknesses. So very, very interesting, the juxtaposition. Cheryl says, what is the best approach for a commander planner in the job search? So if you are a commander, and also I think you're saying planner, I'm assuming you're thinking builder. Are you thinking builder? I'd need to see what your background is. But anytime you're a commander, you are always results orientated. So you have very high standards. You're very results orientated. And you have to be careful, because commanders are one of the first in the job search to come across really pushy and sometimes arrogant. So for my commanders, it's all about patience and focusing on the fact that, not everybody is going to go at the pace that you go, and not everyone's going to see what you see. It's very important that you do that. You're looking, though, for jobs. I'll tell you where the commander is very attractive. Jobs that are there's a lot of problems, or it's very complex. There's a lot of stress. Maybe things have been broken for a very long time. Bringing a commander in who has the confidence to say, I can fix this. Let me at it, right? Then that style, that more direct approach, is really respected because everyone's in pain and looking for a leader. And so you don't have to be the warm fuzzy, because what they're really looking for you to do is to get results, which is what the commander loves to do. So I love to work with commanders when we're looking for that. For them, I want to say, what's the problem bigger than yourself that you want to work on? What's the pain that we want to really amplify in the hiring process so that you can save the day, because that is a good match for a commander. All right, Laura says, best route for an energizer, mentor, educator, researcher, super connector. Okay, so there's an interesting combination. So we've got an energizer who very strong, mentor, educator, super connector. That three, we'll come back to the researcher piece in a minute. But when you have the mentor, educator, super connector, this is somebody who's going to enjoy presenting and training in a coaching capacity. So a lot of times you'll see people who are, let's say we call quote unquote influencers, who would be like this. So somebody like a Tony Robbins would be a really great example, or an Oprah Winfrey would be a really great example. These people are very expressive. They're charismatic, right? They're quick-witted. They hold your attention, but they love to coach you and develop you. A combination of mentor educator means not only can they give you the info, but they can guide you to helping you develop yourself, which is huge. And then if you add that super connector in, they love being with people. So they're going to be with people and put that together. The researcher side is interesting only in the sense that it sounds like you probably like to come up with your own answers and information. So you're not afraid to do the research so that you can turn around and present the information. And you like presenting that information. You probably be very good as like a reporter, for example. And again, as an influencer who has maybe developed their own methodology based on research, something like that would be a good combination there. So it really, as you can see, folks, it really depends. And you have to look at the information and know a lot about the different jobs that are out there as well and how they would match to that. Let's see. Jabber says, would I make a good engineer? I'm a mentor, educator, super connector, and I'm an empathizer. So my challenge there is that a good engineer tends to be more of a contemplator and a researcher and an optimizer. So if you think about that, an engineer's job is to figure out and how to improve a process. It's going to require a lot of research, a lot of information. It's also going to require a lot of thought, a lot of reflection, and a lot of individual contributor type role. When you have this empathizer, super connector, educator, mentor capacity, you want to be helping people. You want to be talking to people. You don't want to be put in a corner, and you don't want to be given a big assignment to do a research project. So I would say, well, I would never say, no, you can't be good at something. I would tell you that based on what you're telling me, engineer doesn't seem like the ideal match. There are probably a lot of other jobs that would be a tighter match for you. Petra asks, how do you see personas change with age? That's an interesting question. I don't think it's as much age, Petra, as it is experience. So if you are leveraging your skill sets, your personas for a long period of time, you could get to a point where you get a little bored with it. And all of a sudden you'd like to do something different. The challenge with that, though, and I've seen this happen, is that people will make a change and say, I want to go feed a different set of personas and do a different type of work. And they feed that for a little while. And then they go, oh, yeah, now I remember why I don't enjoy that so much. So my advice in this situation is that you should find what you're most attracted to from a persona standpoint and build a main career around that, because that's where you're going to get the majority of your satisfaction. But whatever aspect is not met in that role, you should build a hobby career or a side hustle around. There should be some, or, something that you can do, a pastime that feeds those other skill sets so that you can spend some of your waking hours feeling fulfilled in these other ways. And that's really a very important thing. Something that I am a huge proponent of at Work It Daily is pushing everyone to have a hobby career or a side hustle, just for that reason, but also for the sake of, you never know what's going to happen in your career, and it could eventually becomes your main career, which I've seen happen for some people. So that's the better way to think about it, more about not your age, but more about the amount of time you've spent doing certain tasks. You might feel a little fatigue. We hear about people getting burnt out or rust out, and so they need to change things up. But I always caution people to do that temporarily, because usually after you've had a bit of a hiatus, you're ready to go back. Let's see. Miriam says, can contemplators complement empathizers? They can, in the fact that they both care deeply about people, and they both would prefer to go at a slower pace and arrive at decisions at a slower pace. So what's really nice is that the empathizer will be a bit more extroverted, talking to people, engaging people, right? Connecting people. The contemplator might be a bit more reserved, but the contemplator is an unbelievable listener. And so the contemplator will listen, will observe, will really have a good read on people, and then can use that information along with the empathizer's relationship building ability for them to build very strong partnerships, right? So there's definitely some complementary skill sets there for sure. John asks, is it possible to be visionary mentor educator? My results came in 2015. Yeah. So visionary mentor educator, really, John, you like to be in positions of developing people. And specifically, if it's in an environment where you're trying to develop them towards a common goal. So that's another classic combination for somebody who is going to be in sort of that chief marketing officer role, chief revenue officer, even chief chief executive officer roles, sort of those management type roles that have a lot of visibility and require you to manage and lead people and get people rowing in the same direction. So looking at that, that's what I would say that classic combination means to you. All right, let's see. David said, let's talk about researcher, educator, both 25, builder 20, and contemplator, best route. Ooh, that's a great combination. So just so you know, you are a fantastic project manager. And some people say, well, wait a minute, project manager has to manage people and a contemplator is more quiet. Yeah, but projects generally, if you think about it, if you've ever had the project management certification, projects tend to be very intense, right? There is a lot of research that goes into them. There are steps and milestones. Anybody that's taken the project management certification knows that there's a lot of planning that goes into it. They've got to give people the right information and closing gaps of knowledge. So contemplators are good listeners. They have great attention to detail. So they're generally very good project managers. Eileen says, I'm a contemplator with 20% researcher, 20% educator, 15% mentor and builder. Okay, so again, researcher, educator, you're going to be great in a project management role. Also, I would tell you that in certain situations, you would be a good teacher as a contemplator, usually in subjects that would be quite cerebral and require a lot of thought. So I could see maths and sciences, that sort of thing, anything that required a lot of depth of knowledge, being an educator there and enjoying the research process, right? So being like a research professor, for example, would be a good fit for what you're talking about here as well, given that you're a contemplator. Again, being a professor, there are certain types of professors that need to be extremely extroverted, and there are others that don't need to be, and that contemplator style would be actually much better. We do see a lot of them in the education field. Let's see. I've worked in healthcare admin for a very long time, and I think my position will be going away. Where can a visionary superconnector empathizer look? Wow. So if you're a visionary superconnector and empathizer, you really care about people. You were in healthcare, so I can see why the empathizer route worked very well for you. The interesting thing is you were an admin, so historically, admins would tend to have more researcher, optimizer, and educator background from the admin standpoint. You strike me as somebody that would be doing something more like patient advocacy, being able to interview patients, getting them going in something specific, right? Getting them, helping them figure out what paperwork or what direction to go in. Any kind of patient care situation would be a really great fit for you because you've got that empathy factor, but also that super connector. You know how to make them feel at ease. And the visionary factor tells me that you could probably very quickly think of, oh, you should try this, or you should look at this resource or something like that, that you could listen to their situation and be able to kind of think 10 steps ahead for them, which would be good. Great. Michael says, if someone hasn't achieved success in their career field, so no promotions, etc., might they be in the wrong field or just missing the fundamental skills? Oh, that's really an amazing question. Michael, there's a lot of complexity to that. So first of all, the question is, if you're in your profession and you haven't achieved success and you don't feel satisfied, well, then I would argue you're probably in the wrong profession because you're not being intrinsically motivated, internally motivated to want to drive and hit that next level. There's some sort of disconnect there. If you are in a career that you truly enjoy and you're very satisfied though, and you're not getting promoted, I would argue there's a disconnect in terms of your personality and your personas and the way they're being perceived by upper management. And this, again, I talked about contemplators being the most commonly passed over for promotion. A lot of times people see them not only as, okay, they're happy, they're not going anywhere. They have no career drive. I've heard that a lot, which isn't true. I've also heard in the extreme, contemplators referred to as aloof. So that's one example. I've seen empathizers being told they're too emotional and they're too gossipy, and so they can't be promoted. I've seen energizers being told they're too intense and they're kind of bully. They're a bit of a bully, right? They kind of dominate the scene. They're sort of narcissistic. And I've seen commanders be told they're too intense, they're too abrupt, and they don't have people skills, and they're just about the numbers. So those are very extreme and painful things to hear. But that's a lot of times where somebody's personality is being misperceived and somebody's saying, look, we can't promote you because the way you're presenting isn't going to work at the next level. So that's something you would want to explore for sure. Orlando says, I'm curious for a 40% visionary, 30% super connector, 30% warrior, 20% builder, 25% mentor, what careers would be the best? Well, obviously, remember, folks, there's a lot of different careers that would work for you. But you're looking at somebody who's heavy visionary, heavy connecting with people, and very passionate about the mission. So a lot of times you're going to see that be sort of the front face of an idea. So you would see somebody who wants to start up a company and is very charismatic, so very persuasive, right? So you could definitely go in and do that sales and close the vision and get people to go. Challenge is you're not going to like the dirty work. You're not going to like the grudge work. You're not going to like the stuff, the repetitive stuff, the boring stuff. You like big picture vision, getting people excited and making things happen that way. And that's a very important role. But if the role then requires you to do a lot of paperwork and sit there for hours on end, having to do some sort of stuff that feels repetitive, you're not going to be happy. So my advice is that you're looking for careers that really give you that freedom and flexibility to be with people and, affect people through your communication style. That's very, very important. Let's see. Yellow Brick says, so glad I tuned in twice this week. Well, thank you for that. Remember, folks, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 2 p.m. Eastern. Come hang out with me. I have an interview tomorrow morning. Congratulations. Is it acceptable to ask if the job could disappear before the start date before COVID? I wouldn't. I don't think you have to ask it that directly, and I'm sure that wasn't your goal. But at the end, once they get through, you want to look for some buy signals first. So wait until you hear their interest. When they start talking about next steps, and they say, hey, the next round of interviews would be this, or they start asking you your salary requirements or really giving you some indicators that you're going to be one of the finalists in the role, then that might be the time to ask. And you wait till the end when they say, do you have any questions for us? I think it's perfectly okay to say, I wouldn't hold you to this, but obviously I'm curious with everything that's going on in COVID, are you feeling confident that this role will stay open? I know many companies were actively searching and having to put jobs on hold, and I would completely understand if this one would go on hold too, but I was curious how certain you feel this job is going to move forward. Totally okay to ask that question in that framework, being respectful of the fact and giving them the out that it would be totally understandable if they did have to put it on hold. But, did they have any idea on what they thought? Again, you can ask that, just don't ask it too soon in the process. This literally should be one of the last things you're asking, and only if you feel like the interview is going really well and you're getting the buy signals that you're moving to the next round. All right, let's see. Karen says, released from job this week due to COVID. I'm sorry, Karen. Medical, bracing support, prosthetics field. Great. After 18 years with the same company. Is it best to utilize recruiters or job search sites? I'm out of job search practice. So Karen, I'm really going to be blunt here and tell you that you should opt in and get our free Laid Off and Looking webinar. It is about job search strategy for you right now. The job boards, the job sites and recruiters are not going to be of much use to you or anybody else. And the reason for that is that, first of all, just so you all know, companies aren't going to be posting on job boards. And the reason for that is they know the moment they post on an Indeed or LinkedIn or Career Builder or Monster, they're not going to get 50 applications or 100. They're going to get thousands. And they cannot physically respond to those. And now companies are aware that if 1,000 people apply to my job, I have to find a way to respond to all of them or they blame me. So what will happen, and I know this for a fact, folks, because I built Work It Daily after the last recession. I know exactly what happens when this is over and the hiring starts. What they're going to do is just quietly post the job on their own website. And their theory is they'll let everybody in the staff know. They'll say, hey, everyone, we're posting for this job. And they know that their coworkers will spread the word and that their coworkers likely know somebody who's interested in the job. And anybody that's truly passionate about the company should be following the company and would get some kind of alert and know that the job was available. So this is how they dramatically reduce the number of people apply and only get the people that are truly interested in the job. People are shocked. And I was saying this, the godfather of recruiting, Lou Adler himself, he's an amazing individual here on LinkedIn. He's been quoting that 85%, studies show 85% of jobs are gotten via referral in some way these days. 85%, folks. That is going to be just as high, if not higher, post-COVID-19. And so somebody's brother, sister's cousin is going to try to get somebody's resume in the door. And that's how this is going to work going forward. So if you have been working for many years, now is the time to learn job search strategy. and have a very clear plan of attack, have a very targeted list of employers that you want to work for, and a very specific networking strategy to build out so that when they start hiring, you can be one of the first there. Plus, on top of that, have all the right tools. So the right formatted resume, right LinkedIn profile, right cover letter, right interview prep answers. Job search is a skill. And it's not a skill we're taught in school. It is a skill that constantly evolves over the years. And it is a skill that you need to really develop before you go and engage in job search. And the reason I say that, and I'm so glad you asked this question, is that way too many people just dive in. They start throwing their resume out there, throwing their LinkedIn profile out there. And you want to know what happens? They say to me, they come into Work It Daily all the time and they say this, well, I just jumped right in. And immediately I got some calls and I got some interest, and then it died. It stopped. And now nobody's calling me. Nobody's talking to me. Nothing's happening. And that's because they went at it the wrong way. They made mistakes, and now nobody wants to talk to them. And they have to rebuild their entire strategy in order to make it work. And so that's when they find us and they join Work It Daily, and they work with our career coaches, and they get their resume right, their LinkedIn profile right, their cover letter right, their interview answers right, and then their job strategy right. So whether you work with us at Work It Daily or you get free resources, however you do it, if there's one piece of advice I can give everybody out there right now, is that when this is over and millions of people, another 4.5 million people last week announced unemployment. We have 26 million people in the US alone, not including globally. When they all go back, majority of them will not know how to job search. The majority of them will be making all the mistakes that I just talked about. So if you're smart, you are going to go get your things in order now, so that you are ready to job search effectively and beat out the competition, because that is what it's going to take. Otherwise, job search is going to take a very long time. So, I can warn people all day. I'm doing it twice a week. We give away all these free resources. We do these sessions for a reason, because we absolutely know you need this information because you haven't been taught it. But trust me when I say, the more you invest in yourself, your time and your resources, and getting your job search ready, the better off you'll be. And the more opportunities you'll have. I was saying to all our Work It Daily members this week, we do live office hours like this just for our members. And I said to them this week, I'm on the other side of it now. I can see the opportunity. There are going to be breakthrough opportunities in every industry. There are going to be new jobs that pop up all over the place. This is a complete level set. If you didn't like what you did before, let it go. Right? All the judgment is gone. There's no more FOMO. It doesn't matter anymore. Now it's going to be about, how do I build a career and a job that lets me build a happy life? And how do I just impress myself? Because all that worry and ego and fear of what people think, out the window, right? Now it's about figuring it out for ourselves. And I am excited about that, because this is when people are most open to listening to the things that we want to teach them about impressing themselves and building a career that works for them and nobody else. Put your blinders on and do what's right for you. But you need to know how to do that. You need to get off autopilot. You need to stop doing what other people say is the right thing and figure out really what is the right thing for you. And then you've got to pursue a very customized job search to execute on that. But you can do it, folks. It's not rocket science. It's not brain surgery. You just got to get the information. And as we say, work it daily, right? All right, team. Well, thank you. Listen, one more time. Pay it forward. If you know somebody that just got laid off, please send them our Laid Off and Looking URL. I promise you, it's an inspirational session, 6 strategies that are going to help them really be more strategic in their job search. And as you heard today, that's going to be quite important. And of course, our resource page as well. Don't forget to check out the JT Talks Job podcast. It's brand new. We're so excited to have all of you following it. It's on all the major podcast areas. So if you listen to podcasts, grab that as well. And thank you. I just want to thank all of you. We've been live streaming now for a little while on LinkedIn. There's no way to tell you when we're live streaming unless you just know to come here at 2 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I'm just so grateful, all of you, this little community that we've built, all of you that come. It's only as good. The session is only as good as the people that participate. And you're all such active participants. I feel just so incredibly lucky to be able to do this and give this information and work with everyone. But it wouldn't be possible without all of you. So thank you. Thank you for that. As everyone's saying, stay safe, stay healthy. And remember, if you want to win, you got to work it daily. I'll see you next week, team.